Well, so we are continuing in today in Mishna Yomi. We find ourselves today in Peah, Perek Beis, Mishnayos Dalid through Hey. Chapter 2, Mishnayos 4 through 5. So Mishnah Dalid says as follows, Lecharuvin. So now the Mishnah is continuing to talk in terms of what's considered to be a hefsek. Remember again, this has been the topic of the second chapter so far. The general idea as to what goes ahead and can take one field or one orchard and divide it into two. Now the ramification of that would be one field has only one obligation of Peah, and obviously if you have two fields, each of those fields has their own independent obligation. So the Mishnah says ourselves, Lecharuvin, for carob trees, kalaro and zadzan. Now here's what's interesting. Apparently when it comes to carob trees, they're very often planted far apart from one another. They're planted far apart from one another, and ultimately, again, they're very tall, the Bartanura points out, and they have a lot of branches. So because of that, carob trees, as long as they can quote-unquote kalaro and zadzeh, if one tree could see the other, they are considered to be one field. Now, of course, what's unique to this is that even if, technically speaking, you have a wall in between the trees, nevertheless, as long as, quote-unquote, you could see one from the other, they are considered to be as one field, and therefore, halacha lemaisa, one peah suffices for all of them. Amar Gamliel says as follows, Noagin hayu beis abba, nosten peah achas lezesim, shahayu lahem b'chol ruach. Ulecharuvin kalaro and zedzeh. So very interesting halacha. Rabbi Gamliel says, my father's home, they used to give one peah for all of the olive trees that they had in one direction. In one direction. So the Bartanura comments on this, and the Bartanura says, peah os achas haynosna kolazeisim shaylem letzad echad mizracha shalir. So what he says is, it refers to the idea. Rabbi Gamliel says, in my father's home, all the olive trees that were in one direction. So, anything that was on the eastern side of the city, that was considered to be one field. Ulecharuvin, kalaro and zeh. And for carob trees, the halacha was as long as they could see each other. So really, Rabbi Gamliel is saying over here, like Tanakama. So in other words, in terms of carob trees, he's saying the same thing as the Tanakama. As long as they could see each other, they're considered to be one field. What he's adding over here is that for olive trees, he's quoting the practice of his father's home, that what we used to do is all of the olive trees in one direction of the city were counted as one field. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Tzadok, Omer, Mishmo, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Tzadok says, in the name of Rabbi Gamliel, Af lecharuvin kol shahayu lahem b'chol ha'ir. So this is actually very interesting. When it comes to carob trees, what he's saying is as follows. All of the carob trees in any direction were considered to be one field. Now understand what this means. According to Rabbi Eliezer, he's saying that if you had carob trees surrounding the city on the north, south, east, west side, that ultimately all of those carob trees are considered to be like one field. Even though, again, ein ro and elu es elu, they cannot see each other. Obviously, the carob trees in the north cannot, quote-unquote, see the carob trees on the south, yet they are all considered to be one field. So it seems to be a machlokes in terms of what the position of Rabbi Gamliel is regarding carob trees. According to the first approach, Rabbi Gamliel holds like the Tanakama, that carob trees, as long as they could see each other, ultimately are considered to be one field. According to Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Tzadok, Rabbi Gamliel holds that Allah Chalamaisa, even carob trees that can see each other, but are part of one contiguous area, ultimately would be one field, and therefore one peah would suffice. Very interesting machlokes. Good. Mishna hey. But what I do want to point out is, what doesn't seem to be disputed over here in the Mishnah is when it comes to olives. So that Rabbi Gamliel, quoting the practice of his father's home, that all of the olive trees in one particular direction, as long as they're all on the same side of the city, they can go ahead and be counted as one field for peah purposes. Incredible. Mishnah hey. Hazorea sadeo min echad afa pisho ose shtei granos no sin peah achas. Interesting halacha. If you have one type of produce that is planted in the field, even if the produce is harvested at separate times, halacha l'maisa, you only have to give one peah for the entire crop. However, zra'a shnei minim, if you have two different types of vegetation that are planted in one field. Even though you harvest it all at once, you still have to give 2 different peos. So a really interesting idea. So again, if I go ahead and I have one type of vegetation, one type of item planted in the field, even though some of them might be ready earlier, some of them might be later, so I'm harvesting at 2 different times, because it's one species, ultimately, again, I go ahead and give only 1 peah. But if you're planting 2 species, of course, we're assuming there's no kelayim issues over here. You're planting 2 species, even though you're harvesting everything at the same time. Halacha lamaisa, because it's 2 species, you have to give 2 different peos. Hazorea es sadeu shnei minin chitin, asar garn achos nosin peah achos, shtei granas nosin shtei peos. The one exception to this rule is as follows. Let's say one goes ahead and plants in his field 2 different types of wheat. Right? There are different variations of wheat. So let's say one plants in this field 2 different types of wheat. So then the Mishna says it depends. If you harvest all of the wheat at once, then it's looked at as 1 crop, and therefore 1 peah suffices. However, if halacha lamaisa, you harvest it in 2 different times, then the fact that it's 2 different types, 2 different variations of wheat allows it to be seen as 2 different crops, and therefore halacha lamaisa will be chayiv in 2 different payos. Wonderful. We will stop over here for today. We'll continue Hashem tomorrow in Mishnah Vav through Zayin. Wishing everyone a wonderful day.